Good morning and welcome to the David and David on Real Estate Podcast. We are on episode number 135, David. So glad to be talking to you again. And we're going to continue our discussion on the Homeowners Protection Act. There's still quite a bit that we have not dived into. We did talk about the 10-day cooling off period for new freehold homes and the abandonment of the notices of consumer protection noises. What does that stand for one more time?
Nosies, notice of security interests.
Interest, right,
Nosies. Yeah.
from the Land Registry Act, which is great. But what else are we seeing in this act, David?
Well, maybe before we get into some of the other, smaller items that came through this act, I'd love to get your thoughts on, that we've got this 10-day cooling off period. We've had it in for new construction condominiums for a long time now. It's worked relatively well there. Now that's extended under this new Homeowners Protection Act as of early June. There's a 10-day statutory cooling off period for new construction of freehold homes that'll work the same way as the new construction of condos. But we've talked before about the government's toying with it, kicking around whether or not it's a good idea to have some sort of cooling off period for resale transactions as well. And I can't imagine they would ever do it for 10 days. But even for 2 days, for a 48-hour period or 72-hour or something like that, like what are your thoughts on what would that do to them? Like, is that a good thing? Like, we're always looking for consumer protection, but is that just going to screw up the market completely?
Well, I think you have to look at the difference between new home sales and resale homes. New home sales, you're buying it off a floor plan. You're buying it off the reputation of the builder. A lot of the times they use very clever marketing tactics and scarcity approach tactics to get you in and make a rash decision. The resale market differs significantly. First of all, the product's already built. You can touch it, you can see it, you can inspect it, you can smell it, you can see the room sizes, you know exactly where the physical location is. It's a much more tangible product. So I don't think it would be good for the resale market, David. I think it would be a big infringement on the free market movement and equilibrium of what's going on. The other thing is, every house is different. You're not buying a cookie cutter house where you're buying it off a sheet of paper on a construction site sales office. You don't have a lineup that you see. It's a much different product. It's a much different buying experience, and I think it would really harm sellers. And let's really think about this. The seller, the small or medium or a small person who has put their life savings into purchasing an asset, like this is a direct interference with their control over the asset. You're not talking about a builder that has multi-million dollars and has large bank accounts and is this huge corporation. You're talking about the average individual. And I think if the government starts implementing rules and procedures that control your biggest asset, your home is your biggest asset. I think that's going to have, we're going down a path that has big consequences.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Like, it's the last thing I think that I want to see that it happens. Whether it's an active market or an inactive market, I've thought about this and I can't see how it works well in any scenario because let's say you've got someone that's interested, a buyer is interested. I'm interested in two houses. I like house A and I like house B. I like house A the most, but I think there might be a few offers coming in. But if my fallback is house B, so why not put an offer in a house B that I've got 48 hours that I can get out of it in the meantime. So I'm tying up house B while I'm trying to get house A, and then if I get house A, then I waive my right to house B. But if you're the seller of house B, like you can't accept other offers, or you got to accept conditional offers, and you're going to pile up a whole bunch of conditions. Even when you sell a house, you're never stopping. You'd have to just keep selling it to the second buyer, the third buyer on conditional agreements, just in case the first one falls away. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me, right? And I like our current system better. Like, I like the fact, we need an agent to do their job properly. Okay, before an offer, make sure they're looking at it. Get the pre-inspection. If it's multi-offers and you can't inspect and get condition on inspection, do it after. Do a pre-inspection. If it's a resale condo and you can't review this, they're not accepting conditional offers on status certificates. Review the status certificate before the offer is submitted. Like, there's ways around it. If you need your approval, you can't get condition on financing, make sure you got the financing in place before it. So the agents have to work hard and do their professional job. They got to get it to the lawyer, get the lawyer involved at the earliest stage possible to review any issues. And I think we're the consumer protection. Okay, we're on the front lines of it. That's our job to protect the client. Your job as an agent, my job as a lawyer. And I just think it just going to be just a bad situation. So I can't even believe they're actually considering it. I don't know if there's any good examples in the world where a system like that would actually work, but I don't think it works well in a relatively active market like we always have in the GTA and in Ontario and generally.
Yeah, I think it's too much of an infringement on property rights. Like, and look, our property rights are guaranteed by the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So, I mean, if this goes to the Supreme Court of Canada, would that ever be struck down? Like, there's a lot of questions here, and it goes deep. I hope that it doesn't come to be. Just because I think the market really dictates this, and I think if you work with a great professional, there's ways to protect yourself and without infringing the right of homeowners that have really put all their life savings into an asset that we're taking control away from them.
Yeah, control away from a seller, and I think you're putting a first-time home buyer at a clear disadvantage. A younger person or someone that's scraping their money together to buy their first home is at a complete disadvantage to someone who's got deep pockets, who can afford to put deposits down and tie up two or three or four properties if they want for a period of time, and then pick and choose which one they want to go ahead with and chase away competition on it, to the guy who can afford to only put a deposit down on one property and he
I
can
didn't
barely
even look at
afford
it.
that,
I didn't
right?
even look at it from that point of view, but I definitely see that, people taking advantage of the system that have the resources to do that. That's a very interesting viewpoint of this system.
Yeah. So I hope that never happens. I don't have an issue with with the new legislation, the cooling off period for freehold. Like, I welcome that on new construction, because I want buyers to bring me the agreement of purchase and sale and let us review it and let us explain to them what they're getting into, and understand what they want out of the property. So that's a good thing. Um, Although it works, in the absence of it, the system worked as long as the buyer was able to get a condition on lawyer review or a condition on something, so they had to do that. But there's too many people that are just getting stuck right now. So I think new construction sort of makes sense. Resale, I just don't see it working.
Mhm.
And the other aspect, we talk about some other things that are in this legislation, and some of it isn't finalized. There's still some proposals on how this is going to work, but there's issues in the new construction
Yeah,
field, particularly in the condo market, condo projects more than freehold. But there's some issues on freehold as well with bad builders. Builders that are even successful builders at some point in time, but they're bad operators. And we've got a whole bunch of projects in Ontario right now, condo projects in particular, that are in receivership right now
right. They're
because,
canceling the project.
sorry,
They're canceling the project,
some
basically.
are being canceled, some are in receivership, some are being taken over by receivers. There's so much uncertainty. So buyers in good faith that put down deposits a couple of years ago waiting for their dream condominium to be built, and now some of them are just being canceled. And now if they're going to go back to the market, they're going in 2 or 3 years later at a much more expensive market, and financing is way more expensive. And some of them are just in limbo. I've got a meeting with clients on Friday. They're involved in a project they signed a couple of years ago, and it's in receivership. And we're waiting to find out from the receiver, and we're trying to find more information on the receiver, because receivers go in, they look at everything, and then they're going to decide whether they want to go ahead with the project. They're going to pull the plug on it, or are they going to get someone to complete it and build it out? Are they going to honor the old contracts, or are they going to wipe them out and resell them? It's a lot of uncertainty. So that's part of what the government's trying to do with this Homeowner Protection Act, to put in some additional measures that's going to protect home buyers and stop some of the practices that are currently being done by some of these builders that are sort of literally taking money that's paid on one project and using it for a different project. And a bit of a Ponzi scheme that some of them are doing with it, and it's putting a whole bunch of consumers at risk. And eventually some of these builders are actually going to end up in jail, because it's criminal fraud. It's not just bad business practices. It's a lot of these situations has gone beyond that, where this was done knowingly and with deliberate thought to take money from A project and put it into B project and things like that. So that's the other part of this legislation. So we're
So
going to have to see
now,
how it.
sorry, David. So now there's gonna be a disclosure of builders' history of canceled projects, which is, I think, I think that's part of the thought process, right? If you're gonna put your $100,000 deposit on a project that's gonna be built 5 years, you want to see how many projects this builder has canceled, because that's an indication of
Right.
future behavior, right? So I think really important. And I think requiring more builders to participate in Tarion is also, a great proposal in this legislation. Um, the other thing I see here is, the whole heritage issue. And there's so many issues with a house being designated as heritage. There's the heritage list, there's an actual heritage designation, there's a heritage interest list. And I think, homeowners and builders and developers are getting frustrated with the whole process of the whole heritage home, because, just be clear and transparent. Is it a heritage home? Is it not a heritage home? Or designate as a heritage home, so that we know what we're dealing with. But having this whole grayscale of a heritage interest list of whether you are or are not on the heritage list is causing massive amounts of confusion and issues, especially in the development community.
Right. And if a property is subject to the Heritage Act, like if it's there's certain limitations, certain things you can do and you can't do on the property. So we need a reasonable time for the for a determination to be made, and proper factors that go into making that determination, a little more certainty in it, so we know it is or it isn't.
Right.
And the timelines have to be reasonable so people can conduct their business. So I'm in favor of things that crack down on any illegal practice. There's a bunch of shady builders out there. We're not talking about the big ones, but for even the big ones, some of the big names, have gotten into trouble too. So it's good for there to be disclosure. What's going on with them? What's their history like? Are projects being pulled from them? What's their Tarion record like? How many, are they, it's one thing to close a transaction, but I've never seen any new construction close when there hasn't been a list of some deficiencies or some finishes that have to happen post-closing. And we always tell clients, yeah, you can close. Yeah, you don't have you don't have a driveway yet. You got mud instead of sod right now, but it's built enough that the builder can close with you, and you can rely on Tarion to get all those other things finished. And all the things that aren't completed inside will get finished, and you rely on Tarion. Now, some builders are great about their follow-up and and they respect it and they understand their Tarion obligations. And the last thing they want is a complaint to Tarion or for Tarion to have to step in. But you got a whole bunch of other players in the market that will abandon, once they close, they're abandoning it and not following through in a timely fashion. So if you're a buyer that's considering to buy a new construction property, wouldn't you like to have more access to information and check out your builder and see what their record is? And am I going to have problems post closing? Maybe that's why I'm getting such a deal in purchase price on this property, because I'm going to be stuck with $50,000 of things to fix up after closing, because I'll chase the builder and he'll never come through, right? So there's nothing wrong with that. You want to know who it is. So if they're and just because that's there, that's going to make the builders try and stay off those, not have stuff reported. It's going to make them become a little more professional in what they're doing, because they don't want to see a bunch of complaints and a history that's going to look unfavorably on them, right?
100%.
And
It's a whole social justice system, right? Just like we were talking about with open room a couple episodes ago. And by the way, speaking of open room, there's a former NHL player that's had a LTB decision against them that's actually on open room now. It was just posted on their Instagram this morning. So,
yeah,
nobody's immune to social justice, and it's all about tipping the scales of power. Protecting the smaller person. So there's going to be some great changes coming into effect, I think.
yeah, and one other aspect that we haven't touched on yet is in the condominium market. They're expanding the jurisdiction of the Condominium Authority Tribunal, which is a tribunal that's supposed to adjudicate disputes in the condominium transactions. So again, you want these things to be addressed in a timely fashion. So if they're going to be involved and they're going to address, you want to do it, and you want to have full access to the decision and transparency so people can see it. So if people think that they're involved in a dispute, they can look up and see what previous decisions have been made, so they can assess what the likely outcome will be for them as well. And maybe that changes their position, or maybe they negotiate differently on it. But if it has to go to a tribunal to make a decision, you want them to be able to get there in a timely fashion. You want there to be some consistency in the decisions that are made. So they're going to try and beef that up a little bit as well as part of this legislation.
Right, right. Well, David, some exciting times for our industry, and I'm glad the government's taking some of these issues and solving them. And there's a lot here. There's builder integrity. There's protecting seniors with the notices of security interest. There's heritage acts. There's disclosure requirements. So it's an exciting time for the industry.
Yeah, and it's all basically consumer protection. Like, it's all slanted that way, not builder protection or things like that. But it'll have an effect on builders too, and the way they operate. And hopefully, it's weeding out all the bad operators in the industry and creating more certainty. And so that's a positive, and we'll just have to see how it all plays out over time.
Love it. David, I'd love to chat about protecting your commission. I know we talked about this before, but I think it's one of those topics that's great to bring up again. So I'd love to do a couple episodes on that, and hopefully you guys enjoyed these episodes, and send us your questions, connect with us on social media, and we always love hearing from you guys.
Well, if we're going to talk about protecting your commission, then we've got to also talk about protecting your legal fees as part of the same thing. Because and it gets us back to when we first started doing these podcasts, David. Part of it was, let's talk about how all these things affect us as small business owners, right? It's just part of our business. So just like you want to protect your commissions and your agent commissions, we have the same thing in our industry. We want to protect our legal fees. We want our people that work for us to be paid. We want to earn proper legal fees. So I think it's a great discussion to have, and get an appreciation out there of what, how hard the agents work to earn their commission, and how hard the lawyers work to earn their legal fees, and how they should be protecting, the amounts, and how they get paid. So I think it's a great discussion. So I'm always up for it.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to it. Thanks everybody for joining us, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you.
Thanks, David Corwin.